I'd like to begin by calling the meeting to order. This special meeting, we'll talk more about that in a second. And let's begin by pledging allegiance to the United States.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as is traditional, I would like to ask if any member of the council has a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with any of the items we will be discussing today.
No.
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 Thank you. As you all know, today is a specially called meeting. Council has a lot of work on its agenda. In addition to the major question of shoreline maintenance and dredging. In order to give a fair amount of time to all of the other issues that we have and to shoreline maintenance and dredging, we decided to break out the dredging issue, handle it in this special meeting, and no doubt some additional special meetings as well. The requirement for a special meeting is that we are able to address only those things that we have notified the public about in advance. So the things that are listed on the handout, and especially the 4 issues at the end of the handout, will be the things that we are addressing. The one obvious exception there is issues regarding North Jinks Creek. That issue is so large in and of itself that it will be handled in one or more special meetings sometime in the near future. The objective that we have for today is to talk among ourselves and to converse with you in trying to make the fairest possible decisions for our Sunset Beach community. We have all, and especially the 5 members of council, since I'm only a recent member, have studied, have read more documents than we can probably count, listened to presentations from a variety of experts, and heard from and talked with you all in getting your thoughts about how we should proceed with dredging. You all know these are difficult issues. They would be for any community, and they're especially difficult for Sunset Beach because of our geographic configuration. If you've been following along, you know that all the other barrier islands in North Carolina have canals that empty into another canal or directly into the Intracoastal Waterway. Sunset Beach is alone in having its canals, let's say the finger canals, empty into a canal, but then be connected to the Intracoastal Waterway through a naturally occurring waterway. And that raises a host of additional considerations, both for us and all of us in this community, and also for the state and federal agencies that work with us and grant permits in order for us to proceed. This issue, as you also know, has been considered by council for a number of years, but a final decision or firm decisions haven't been made. And we probably should all be appreciative of this council because they have decided that we are at the point where action needs to be taken. So there'll be some difficult decisions made. I imagine by the end of today, all of you will be pleased with at least one decision, and you'll probably all be displeased with at least one decision. But it is time to make decisions, and that is our hope for today. We are going to do one thing a little bit differently. and that is to try to involve you a little bit more than would be typical at a regular council meeting. In special meetings and in the nature of the conversation we're going to have today, I suspect there may be times when, as council is discussing an item, you may have something that is very pertinent at that particular second, and you would really like to share it. And all of us have been where you are now and not had an opportunity to do that. I don't want to interrupt the flow of conversation on council. But at a point when I think council has had most of what they have had to say on each issue, I want to give you an opportunity right at that point. If you have a fact to share, an experience to share, some information that you think would be helpful to us. And we'll see how the meeting goes, but the intention would be that we'll give you a chance to make that comment before final action is taken by the council. We want to start today's meeting with something that happened just yesterday. For that, I'm going to turn to Hiram for an explanation.
As I made y'all aware yesterday in an email, we recently found out from the state that the dredging grant contract had expired June 30th. This is news to us. It was also news to the state. We've had conversations as recently as the beginning of this month with them, talking about needing to up the funding for their share. But apparently they had a person retire last spring that was the one who was managing the contracts for several communities, and he was the one getting all the emails, and apparently they didn't forward his email system. So it's a simple fix. It's not a crisis. It's not detrimental. It's just a matter of paperwork. All we really need to do is have the council basically make a vote on a new resolution. It's the same resolution that set the whole grant going in the first place. But it's just, we've updated the date, we've updated the figures, and then we just resubmit the application, and then on their end, it's just, you know, falling back into the same boat that we've been in. What would have happened originally, should have happened, is in May, they would have notified us that the grant was expiring, we would have had a letter of extension, and it would have been extended for another term. So we've missed that opportunity. It's just a matter of resubmitting the resolution and application. Doesn't change anything that's already been paid out. It just allows us to continue getting payouts moving forward.
What's the chance of it being denied?
If y'all wait till December, it probably will be. But if you do it this week or next week, then it won't be, it shouldn't be denied at all. We've been told that it's just, right, Robert? Yeah, it's just a matter of getting this done sooner than later.
Mayor, should we do that resolution now at the beginning of the meeting?
We do have one ready for y'all, and it is related to the topic, so I don't see there being a conflict with the special meeting.
I agree.
I agree.
Lisa, do you have the exact wording, or Hiram, do you have the exact wording?
I don't have it in front of me.
Do you want to make the motion?
You want to read it?
Usually the mayor will read it in, and then someone will make a motion.
This is a resolution requesting state assistance through the Shallow Draft Navigation Fund for the shoreline management and pre-dredge analysis. And we understand that this will be an updated resolution that will include new cost figures and any other adjustments of that type, but essentially the same application that we submitted earlier. Do I have a motion to?
I have a motion to put this forward.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
No.
No.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Will you send us copies of that once you finalize it, please? Thank you.
If you're following along on the handout, you might look at page 4. And the first issue that we are going to address relates to South Jinks Creek. And again, if you have been following the conversations, you will know that the permit that applies to the feeder canal, the finger canals, the Bay Area, and South Jinks Creek. That's one permit, and that's how we have been told it should be done. That the additional amount of water or additional velocity of that water as it outflows, and you understand that much of the damage that occurs when there is a storm surge is not from the inflow of water, but rather as the water is trying to get back to the ocean. And so it's oftentimes on the backside that we will suffer the most erosion or the most damage. So the question is, by dredging South Jinks Creek, are we increasing the volume of water, and or are we increasing the velocity of water in such a way that it could potentially cause greater erosion or even inroads into Palm Cove or the eastern end of the island? Now, this is an issue that, of course, is not just surfaced. It has been addressed before. And Bob, if you would be willing to get us started and just describe for all of us once again how Moffatt-Nichol has approached this particular issue.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council Mayor. During the initial phase of the work for the design, we looked at a modeling analysis, and the purpose of the analysis was to determine if the velocity of the tidal currents would change based solely on the bathymetry. So in other words, if we changed the bathymetry, if we changed the channel alignment and made it wider, deeper, would that create additional velocities? Our modeling analysis shows it would change, it was a negligible amount. We did not look at just South Jinks Creek. We looked at dredging from the Intercoastal Waterway down, so North and South Jinks Creek. We included North and South Jinks Creek and showed the velocities would change some, less than, I think, 3% or less than a foot per second. But so the change, in our opinion, is negligible. Especially since we've decreased from that modeling analysis now, our footprint, we are digging within a tidal connection or a connecting channel. We are not influencing the input or the outlet or the inlet. So we're not touching the connection at the Intercoastal Waterway, and we're not touching the connection at Tubbs Inlet. So the critical cross section, as we heard Spencer talk about in the presentation Friday, I believe, is not changing. So the velocities are not changing. The critical velocity, the critical cross sectional area, the choke point in the channel is not changing. So by us widening the channel or making the channel deeper within the flow area, will have a negligible effect. It will be the tributaries adding to Jinks Creek that will cause the velocity change, and so we saw that about less than 3%, less than 1 foot per second. I think less than half a foot per second, if memory recalls. So we're not seeing, and we're not saying that in the storm event there won't be erosion. I've heard that a lot of times. That we're not saying there won't be erosion. We're saying there won't be any additional erosion or damage due to the dredging as it's proposed right now, or that the additional amount would be negligible, is what we're saying.
And I would like to ask you just one other question and then turn the questioning over to council. We all have been in a number of meetings together, and several coastal scientists have indicated that while it's not possible to predict with accuracy, given the vagaries of Mother Nature. They have some concern that there could be increased problems. How do you, in a sense, what you've said already is a response to that, but could you respond directly to the concerns that they have expressed?
No, I perfectly understand that. In a modeling analysis, it's, you know, as an engineer, even my previous supervisor gave me this saying, and I hold on to it. All models are wrong. Every one of them will be wrong. That is the purpose of the model. Some of them are useful, so that the model gives us a guide. If we looked at something wrong going into it, if the input's wrong, the output's wrong. It's a model. It's not real life. Is there a potential for a lot of things to go wrong? Absolutely. Now, we don't believe that in this case. I'm looking at the project, and you know, I compare it to a bathtub. I did this in one council meeting. If you have, I think, a 1/2-inch pressurized line coming into a bathtub, and you have a 2-inch drain going out, and you can turn that faucet on, faucet being Tubbs Inlet, the outlet being Intercoastal Waterway, or reversed, you're going to have a certain velocity coming into that bathtub. Now, whether you use a bathtub or an Olympic-sized swimming pool, if your inlet is still a 1/2-inch pressurized line and your outlet is a 2-inch gravity drain, those velocities don't change, whether you're draining into a bathtub or Olympic-sized pool. You'll have some, because of the static pressure of the water build up in the pool, you'll have some velocity change because the water going out of the gravity line will be pressurized, but it's negligible, and that's what we're saying here. Is there will be some change, but you're not. We could put the only additional studying we can do is put current meters out there before and after dredging and check it. But we're not. I believe we are restoring the channel to its previous conditions, or even less than what we can previously seen on the aerials. So if that time frame when that channel was larger didn't cause erosion, then I don't think we're going to cause erosion by doing this. So we're looking at this as we're essentially digging within a channel, not connecting the inlet or outlet, not touching those, and really see little concern in doing so. But obviously there's always a chance. So I listen to the concerns, and I want to understand their concerns and work with it. You know, it's not something that we just want to say, walk away from. I think there will be additional monitoring afterwards to verify or to look at and gain further knowledge on it. But from an engineering standpoint, from my professional opinion, I do not see it as a concern. And even talking with Spencer the other day, he was more concerned because we were bringing the flow regime away from the shoreline. Our dredging footprint, we have plans if anyone would like to see, our dredging footprint actually takes the flow regime away from the shoreline in South Jinks Creek, away from the docks. We purposely designed that so that we would, you know, we didn't want to get into bringing the equipment too close to the docks. We're staying a minimum, of 5 feet from those docks and dredging the existing shoal. So there's deep water under the docks right now. We're taking that channel away from that. So there is a concern, more concern in my mind now, that we're actually going to create shoaling underneath the docks because we're taking that flow away. So we're slowing the velocities down underneath the docks adjacent to the shoreline. So that sediment in that transport area will have slower velocities and then settle sooner and build up quicker. Is a potential.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
you're talking about the South Jinks Creek portion right now, not in the canals, the finger canals.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
While we have Bob at the microphone, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask him?
So Bob, basically you're bringing the canals back to where they originally were dredged, correct?
We're not quite meeting the full spectrum of where they were originally dredged. I think we're somewhere in between where they are now and where they were originally dredged. So we're trying to increase them, increase the flow area and navigation area, but we're not meeting, I believe we're less than the original dredging footprint from 1970s when the inlet was originally.
So that if the original dredging didn't affect the flow, why should this? It shouldn't, correct?
That's my, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I do, Mr. Mayor. I am told there's a sand plug in South Jinks Creek. Will that be disturbed, and what is the impact if that is disturbed?
The sand plug, as I understand it, is the entire shoal system in South Jinks Creek, from Tubbs Inlet up to Riverside Drive. If we look at aerials, we see how the sand has built up. If we look at low tide, we can see emergent sand shoals down there, and that is what I consider the sand plug. We are taking some of that out, but we are not breaking through it, so to speak. So we're not touching Tubbs Inlet. So we're not cutting all the way through that sand plug. We're stopping at the limits of the town of Sunset Beach. So again, I don't think we will increase the velocities, but I think that increase will be negligible, and I don't think that there'll be any, in my opinion, I do not believe there'll be any significant impacts from erosion, increased erosion from our dredging event.
Additional questions from council?
Not at this time.
Yes. Thank you, Bob, for coming up, and I know we'll be back to you. Council members, obviously, the one most important thing we want to be sure is that if we do dredge South Jinks Creek, that we are not creating new or additional problems for members of our community. And so the question I would put to you is, do we have the confidence in that to proceed as has been planned with South Jinks Creek?
I have no problem going forward with it, none.
Okay.
I have no problem going forward.
Anybody else like to make?
I have no problem going forward.
I'm good with it.
I'm okay with it, but I still do have some worries.
Okay.
I am concerned because the most important thing is to prevent erosion and increase flooding. I would like to have some type of scientific assurance, if possible, to better understand the impact of that decision. And I feel a little uncomfortable at the present time not knowing what the impact could be. So I would like to suggest that we somehow, with Bob's help, get better assurance that we're not creating a problem
Okay.
in the future.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
We have studied this to death. There is no, guarantee on any of this. The only good news is we've dredged it in the past. We've been through major hurricanes, and it has not unplugged. We have not had major erosions back then or now. So, Bob is very clear that this is not a guaranteed science. And to study upon study upon study, we need to start this dredging so we could start it this fall and end it up by the end of next year. We keep pushing it off, pushing it off. This is why councils in the past never addressed this issue, because they didn't have the nerve to make the right decision. This is the right decision for the town to go forward, do the dredging. We have the grants available. Let's do it. Let's stop pushing this, kicking the can down the road.
I have one more question.
Please.
What is our liability should the worst-case scenario happen? Does anybody know?
Hiram, are you prepared to answer that?
No, because I don't know if that's been exactly studied, but I'm curious to what you're referring to, if you're referring to a velocity change that would take, say, are you about Palm Cove or something, or?
Well, that, or suppose this causes Ocean Isle to, their west end to erode, which has been mentioned as a possibility.
Well, as Mr. Neal just pointed out, we're not even, we're not touching an inlet that far out. So Tubbs Inlet itself wouldn't be dredged all the way to the ocean. We won't even be going, we'll barely be going to our city limits. But that's already an inlet hazard area and a high erodible zone. It's already predicted that any given storm could remove 440 feet of land mass for both us and Ocean Isle. And that's just any given thunderstorm could do something like that. So it's not so much that we're increasing that probability as that it's already existing with our current conditions.
Thank you, Hiram.
So, I mean, we could still talk to legal about it, but, I mean, I don't see, my whole point, though, is I don't see where we'd be increasing a liability issue for something that already exists.
Thank you.
Charlie?
I think we can't look for guarantees, and I think that's what Rich wants. And I agree with Mark. It's been kicked and kicked and kicked down the road, and we do need to start now. We all hope for the best, but there are just no guarantees.
And John?
I think, number one, we should focus on making sure that what we do today enables Moffett and Nichol to move forward immediately with submitting the permits. The permits are key to letting us know where we can dredge, when we can dredge, and start calculating how we're going to answer all these other questions that are in there. So I strongly object to anything that delays the process. I had an email exchange with one of our speakers from Friday, Spencer Rogers, and I mentioned to him that there's concern that the increased volume would erode Tubbs Inlet, the east end of the island, the west end of Ocean Isle, and that a storm would cause a Jinks Creek to relocate and cut across Palm Cove directly to the ocean, which kind of summarizes the concerns that we've been talking about there. His answer was, quote, all those things could happen with or without dredging. In other words, just what Hiram said, what we heard in the presentations on Friday. You can't predict these things. And studying all the possible what-if implications of a hypothetical erosion on in any of these areas would be interesting, that I'm sure some academics would like the grant money to do that. But I think it's beyond what we should be doing here today. And I think we've got the answer. You know, we should move forward and agree. We'll go through with the South Jinks Creek dredging in answer to number one.
Ease up on those academics, if you would, please.
I'm one.
That's true. This might be a good time if someone in the audience has a question that they could put forward, or they have something pertinent that they think should be presented that would help our deliberations. If you do, please take the mic, Dr. Hildeman.
My name is Richard Hildeman. I live in 407 37th Street. I would like to comment on some of the conversations that I've heard here, more than questions. Is that all right?
Yes, it is.
We heard from Mr. Benton that study after study after study has been formed on this, and they're kicking the can down the road. To my understanding, there's only been one computer modeling study to see the effect of erosion and dredging in South Jinks Creek. That's the only study that's been done. As a scientist, you need to understand there are limitations of what a computer modeling can do. One of the faults of computer modeling, it depends on the input data you put into the model. Moffett and Nichol put in a certain set of data in the input, and it said it will not cause any increase in velocity or erosion on South James Creek. However, 3 independent scientists, using the same modeling that Moffett Nichols used, put in different input data, and guess what they found? They believe the velocity will increase by 40%. I mean, the volume will increase by 40%, and the velocity will increase. Who's right? I don't know. But scientists who use modeling as prediction. Then they either, depending on what your discipline is, you're going to get experimental data or observational data to support that. If you can't get data to support that, then it's not valid. So I urge you to figure out who is right, is to look at some historical data of what dredging can do. I believe one of the speakers on Friday made a very important point. He said the coming and going of water in Jenks Creek and Tubbs Inlet is a very complex process. I believe he said that. Then he said, if you mess with the plumbing, you're going to have consequences. He also said the dredging of Folly Beach in South Carolina is a very similar dredging of Jenks Creek and Tubbs Inlet. And he said there were consequences. Before going forward, I will ask you to investigate what those consequences were. Again, dredging may cause consequences. Computer modeling doesn't give you the answer. You need something supportive. Also, Mr. Rogers said taking out part of the sand tidal delta is not going to increase anything. That is contrary what Dr. Patera told you on Friday. He said tidal deltas break the wave action of water trying to get back out. And he said, in his opinion, it will have consequences and increase erosion and flooding. Who is right? I don't know. And you talk about, well, there's no guarantee. That is true. You also talk that Rogers says, with or without the navigational channel, you're going to have erosion. That is true. But the question that needs to be answered, will the navigational channel increase that risk?
Okay.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say something about that. Listen, there's going to be 1,000 studies. There'll be 500 on one side, 500 on the other side. It's going to be 5 years from now. These canals are going to close in. We're never going to be able to dredge. The property value here, these people bought these homes expecting to have canals there. When they bought the homes, they understood they had to pay for the dredging. If this town council would have acted 10 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about this issue right now. And we dredged this, this project 30 years ago. These canals were dug. It did not affect the island, and I don't believe it's going to affect the island now. So we need to go forward.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
So do I.
Does anyone else have a comment or question? Please.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm Trudy Golding. I'm a licensed real estate broker with Landmark Sotheby's International Realty. We do a tremendous amount of business both on Ocean Isle Beach and Sunset Beach. And the fact remains, or continues to be, that people come to the beach because they want water. They want to rent homes that have water frontage. They want to buy homes that have water frontage. They want to move here or visit here so they can enjoy water activities. And sadly, as the years have gone by, the amount of accessible water has diminished. And so this has not only a negative impact on real estate sales, but that also consequently impacts the value of the property, which in turn impacts its tax revenue. And so it's just a vicious cycle. I would encourage all of you to do what you have continued to do and what you're working toward, and that's get the water back in the canals and let us continue with the wonderful beach life that Sunset Beach has to offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And does anyone else have a comment or question they would like to make?
My name is Leslie Nolan, and I live here in Sunset Beach.
I can't
sorry,
hear you,
I
ma'am.
couldn't-
My name is Leslie Nolan, and I live here
You can
in
pull that
Sunset
down.
Beach.
There you go.
I've
And
lived
your address?
155 New Haven Court.
Yep.
I don't believe anybody else had to give their address. Anyway, I've been living along the coast for over 40 years now, and I have lived in different areas in North and South Carolina, and I have seen the damage that has been done by people who, out of good intentions, wanted to have a little more water behind their home. I hear about property values. This is not going to increase my property value, but I'm very concerned about the damage that will be done not only to the creek, but to the environment. I'm not hearing anything about the fishing, the birds, the oysters, the other things that bring people here to enjoy. I've seen damage at that end where people can't walk anymore at certain times. And most of the people who come to Sunset Beach don't have waterfront property access to a canal. It's a very limited number of people who are requesting this based on the number of people who enjoy the beach. So, what kind of damage might be done? Who knows? But I'd like to know how this is going to impact those of us who live in Sunset Beach and may have to help pay for repairs to the damage that's done to the few people who wanted a deeper canal for a bigger boat.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Diane Borman. I live 1550 North Shore Drive. I've been listening to the pros and cons, which everyone has been talking about. I've been living in North Shore, my residence, for about 2 years. And I've contributed to sidewalks. I contributed to other things that the town has mandated. These waterways are not just for people on the canal. The waterways are for vacationers, people to enjoy. This is how we get revenue on Sunset Beach. People enjoy the beaches. If the canals aren't dredged, then I fear for the survival of Sunset Beach. And I've been looking at the articles or the emails that have been going back and forth. There's pros and cons on both sides. We have to think of the survival. We have to think of, I know they talk about liability. Well, what is the liability if it's not dredged? Who's going to pay for the demise of Sunset Beach, the housing, all the investment we put into our housing? What's going to happen? That scares me. I think people are wearing blinders. I hear the gentleman talking, and I know my husband has gotten a lot of emails. And all these scientific studies I find extremely confusing. Although I have spoken to people who have been here 20, 30, 40 years, which I kind of find they have more validity in their voice by speaking up and saying that if it's not dredged, Sunset Beach will see the demise. I was riding my bicycle yesterday and I saw one of the canals totally dry. I have it on my phone. That's a sad sight. Now, I know people are worried about the fish and the oysters. Well, I have to tell you, my dock was built about 2 years ago. I can't believe the amount of oysters and stuff on my dock. Is it going to be disrupted? Yes, of course, just like anything else. Gets disrupted, but you're going to probably see it tenfold, 20-fold. We can't guarantee anything, but the dredging has to be done. And I think everyone should saddle a burden, maybe on a sliding scale or whichever, because the people on the canal people think we have an ever-ending piggy bank where we can support everything else, but yet the other people don't want to help support. Well, everyone has to chip in. It's not fair that one person should saddle that burden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I think we have, let's have her go since she has not gone yet. Richard, let's have her go first. She has not spoken yet.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Betty Oakes. I live at 412 Cobier Street. My question is to the people that are objecting to this, that they do not consider they have to pay into it. You know, I'm on a fixed income too. But if they don't help, then are we gonna be allowed to put a gate up there and say this is private property, you can't bring your boat down and stop the visitors that are coming from the mainland up these channels? These channels need to be dredged. I mean, my dock sits flat on the ground, and I've been through one dredging. And that's another question. Will it be dredged just at night? But that's not my concern. My concern is I think everybody should have to chip in, whether it be city, whether it be people that come to the beach, whatever.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a comment, sir? Go ahead. And then maybe we'll have time for one more comment on this particular item, and then we'll bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Kelly Harris. I have a home at 1809 Canal Drive on the bay in Sunset Beach. Been there for about 10 years. Prior to that time, I had a house on Marlin Street in Sunset Beach on one of the canals. So experienced the last dredging of the canals, I believe 2002. Correct me on the date if that's not exactly right, but there was absolutely no detrimental effects whatsoever to the dredging. Our back porch overlooks South Jinks Creek, the bay, and part of the feeder canal and North Jinks. Okay, my wife Lee is back here in the white jacket. A couple years ago, we rescued a young man that's stuck in South Jinks right at dusk. We drove over to the back of the bay, communicated with him. He had run aground. The next high tide was about 3 o'clock in the morning. So I said, "Sir, can we help you?" He said, "No, I'm going to wait till the next high tide." I said, "Well, you're going to be waiting until 3 o'clock in the morning." So he swam across South Jinks to the nearest pier, and we took him back to his home in Ocean Isle. So this dredging needs to happen. I mean, as I think Councilman Benton pointed out, you have 1,000 studies, you're going to have 500 on each side. But I've been fortunate enough at my home back in Randolph County to serve on the Board of Education for 9 years and the Public Health Board for 9 years. Sometimes you just have to use common sense and make a good decision. And the common sense thing is to dredge the canals, in my honest opinion. And I will address also about it just benefiting the property owners. We watch the fishermen in Tubbs Inlet. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of boats coming in and out of there every year. I'm going to say 95% of them are not homeowners there. They're people who come in to enjoy our coast, enjoy our beach, enjoy what Sunset Beach has to offer. So, you know, it needs to continue. And I respectfully ask the council to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard, if you want to I think you've got.
Just a short comment. I think it should be very, very clear. I know no one who objects to dredging the canals, the feeder finger canals, Canal Bay area, or Mary to Turtle Creek. No one objects to that I'm aware of. The concern is dredging Jinks Creek, which is a natural occurring creek. So let's be clear, I don't think anybody objects to the canals.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your comments with. Did you have a comment?
I was just looking at public rules for public comment period, and I was confused.
We're actually deviating from that a little bit today to try to give the audience more opportunity to speak when they have, at the time of an issue. Council, let's bring it back to us and see if
Can we have a short break?
Sure. Let's take a break for 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break.